Hello, everybody. Welcome back to How Come, and happy Virgo season to you all. Happy birthday to Ben, whose birthday was August 30th, today, Sunday. So if you're like, this episode didn't come out as early as I'd like, well, blame the man who was born 34 years ago. And also go check out patreon.com/howcome because episodes are always up earlier there. How exciting is that? Very exciting. My birthday is coming up soon, September 9th. How exciting for me. My love language is getting tagged in posts on Instagram and Twitter. So if any of you like to show love in that way, ooh, I'd be so excited to receive it. September 9th. I'll probably be setting a countdown on Instagram just to remind people. Today we are talking about catcalling with Sophie Sandberg from Catcalls of Nyc. There is a trigger warning. We're going to be talking about harassment. Harassment all the way up. Rape is mentioned. Trigger warning. Brace yourselves. I think the episode is super important, though, and I think you're really going to like it. Catcalls of Nyc is a grassroots initiative that uses public chalk art to raise awareness about gender-based street harassment. They get stories from people off the internet who write to them. They write out the comments in chalk, word for word, with the hashtag Stop Street Harassment, and they post the images on social media. You should definitely check them out. Their goal is to spur dialogue, provide a platform for story sharing, and promote cultural change. Since Catcalls of Nyc started in March 2016, it has inspired over 150 young activists around the world to start catcalls of sites in their cities. And now Catcalls of Nyc makes up part of Chalk Back, a global youth-led movement against gender-based harassment. And we're interviewing Sophie Sandberg. She is a gender justice activist, chalk artist, and founder of Catcalls of Nyc. I met her in New York. We're going to talk about that. And she is great. Her work has been featured in the New York Times, BBC, Cosmopolitan, and NBC. She is a fellow of the Vital Voices and Tresemme Leadership Incubator for Young Women. She champions local and global efforts to combat gender-based violence through public art, education, and events. And yeah, we thank her for all of her work. She is amazing. So you guys are you're going to be obsessed after this episode. So thank you again to Sophie for doing this podcast. And thanks to Tushy for supporting How Come. Tushy is a sleek bidet attachment that clips onto your toilet and sprays your butt clean with fresh water. And it's the best thing you can do for your butt, and it starts at just $79. What? Yeah. Go to hellotushy.com/howcome and get 10% off your order.
How come? How come? How come I can't achieve? How come I can't achieve? I'm rolling up my sleeves. I'm rolling up my sleeves. Oh baby, I believe these guests can help. Cause I can do it by myself.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Oh my God, thank you so much for being here. I feel like this has been such a long time coming.
I'm so excited. I feel like we've been talking about it for months.
Forever.
I'm glad we're finally doing it.
Yeah.
I literally came upon you in Central Park while writing a quote on the street. I feel like it was like 9 months ago at this point.
Yeah, I think so. And I just found your podcast like a week before that. So it was such a funny coincidence.
So funny. Such a funny coincidence. And like I was telling my boyfriend about that we were interviewing you today. And I was like, yeah, I met her in the park. I was with Charlotte. And he was like, you were with me. I was like, what? And he's like, I like distinctively remember this. And like, I was with you. And like, you went off to talk to her and she knew the podcast. And I was like, yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah, that was you.
He was chopped liver, I guess.
He was not the most important part of the day. You were literally like, I don't remember. I wish I could remember the phrase that you wrote on the ground, but it was something disgusting that was said to someone, I think, pretty young. And I came up to you and I was like, hey, what are you doing? And you were like, yeah, we have this thing called Catcalls of Nyc. Basically, we just write gross things that people have said. Or I'll let you phrase it.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, that sounds about right. Something really gross said to someone really young. So basically, yeah, Catcalls of Nyc is an Instagram account, an initiative to raise awareness about street harassment.
Mm-hmm.
So we write the word for word quotes of what is said to people.
Mm-hmm.
We get people to submit via Instagram DM, share their stories, and then we write them with chalk on the streets where they happen. And that's what you ran into in the park. We were having an event actually where lots of people could share their stories.
Yeah. Do you remember the first time that you were catcalled? Because I remember mine so very vividly.
Yes. No, definitely. I tell this story a lot because it really stuck with me, and I'd love to hear yours too. I was walking to work. It was my first day of work, and I suddenly got out of the subway. I was downtown. I was really excited because it was like my first kind of independent walking experience. I was a teenager.
Like 18 or like
15, 14 or 15.
Just new working license.
Yeah.
Workers' papers.
Super young. Super eager and like fresh faced. And the cat calling started. Yeah, it happened on like every block. So that was like so striking to me. Because it felt like on each corner some man would either look me up and down or say like, you're sexy or you're gorgeous. And it was so bizarre because I felt like already as a 15-year-old, I was hearing them as like, okay, these are supposed to be compliments. I'm supposed to want this type of validation, but then it felt so wrong. It felt so uncomfortable. They were like twice my age.
Yeah. Did you grow up in New York?
I did, yeah.
Okay. So it surprises me that I guess it was like the first time you were walking alone, so they felt comfortable saying it to you. But my story, I was walking downtown with my mom. I think we were scouting out places for my bat mitzvah, like venues. I was 12. I was wearing a pair of juicy sweatpants that said juicy on the tush. It was my first pair of tush phrase pants. I was like, oh my God, I'm like cool. And we were in the West Village, and this guy said, "Juicy, give me some of that juice."
Oh my God.
And my mom turned around and she goes, "She's 12. And I go, "I'm 13. Which still confused. I'm like, what was I trying to prove? Like, was I hitting on him? I definitely wasn't actually hitting on him back, but I was like definitely making myself seem more available to somebody who just like talked about my butt, like a stranger who talked about my butt,
Yeah.
And it's so ingrained in us. Like, you see catcalling in pop culture, and sometimes it's perfectly harmless. Sometimes those people actually end up talking, and it's like romantic, and it's like a compliment. So it's this really confusing, especially when you're at an age that like you're developing, and a lot of us have looked our most awkward most recently, and have just gotten out of it. So we're like, oh, this is validation. Like, I'm not an ugly duckling anymore. Like, I've blossomed.
Right.
But really, you're getting harassed.
Right. No, for sure. That's what's so complicated for young girls, because on one hand, you feel like, oh, this is maybe a compliment. This is something that I should be looking for. Yeah, like some sort of validation. I think that's so funny that you said that I'm 13 in response. But I feel like
psycho.
We're so confused at that moment, and we're so lost, and the like power imbalance is so strong that it does make sense to feel a lot of confusion in the first catcalls.
100%. I mean, and I think down the line, the later ones as well. You could still, I remember like, I used to have a joke early in my stand-up that I was like, ugh, catcalling. If I ever see a woman get catcalled, I scream at the man. I say, don't fucking catcall her. I'm standing right here.
Got it. Cause
it's just like, obviously it's like, come on, like say I'm the cute one. And it's a joke, but it's still like, it kind of is ingrained in us too, that like, if you're with a group of women and somebody else gets hit on that isn't you, it's like, well, why aren't I getting harassed?
Right. Yeah. No, and
which is fucked up.
It's so fucked up. And I think some of the worst moments I've had with women are when women have said, oh, actually, you're lucky that you still get catcalled.
Yeah.
Or I wish I got that kind of attention from older women, both in the comment section on Instagram and like on the streets. And then how do you argue with that? And then some men will say, oh, actually, the occasional woman enjoys it and likes that validation. So it can be really tricky to argue with that.
Have you ever gotten a DM of some, like a relationship that started out of catcalling?
Absolutely not. No one has submitted a street harassment story and then said, I have met my partner. But People in
Okay.
the comments, like I think a few times have tried to argue like, oh, my friend met her partner on the street.
Okay.
Yeah, so there are a few people who have tried to argue that catcalling is okay because of the one friend they know who actually did in fact meet their partner.
Because of the
Right,
outlier.
right.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, no one has ever DM'd us on Instagram and said, "I'm so excited. Someone catcalled me."
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it never happened.
That
No.
used to be a big one I used to use when I was young. I used to go, "Has that ever worked on someone?"
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's great.
And they'd usually just not say anything. But I know that you guys sometimes get in trouble when you put up stuff because people are like, this is disgusting. Like, how could you be putting this in public?
Yeah, no, for sure. It's funny actually because when we ran into each other at Central Park, I don't know if you saw that part, but
Yep.
we did get stopped by the park
Yep.
people. And they were they were upset specifically because we wrote the word boob. He said, you know, like everything else is like kind of okay, but the word boob or boobs, like that's pretty like inappropriate. So he was specifically upset by that. So yeah, I mean, what I did in that situation, what I do all the time is just say, this was said to someone on the street in a public place. We're documenting it, raising awareness about it, showing everyone else what was said because often it goes unheard. You know, so I explain the mission of the project, but that doesn't always work. People get so upset by the language, but like they're upset that we're documenting what's being said. They're not upset that this is being said in the first place. It doesn't quite register.
It's like if you guys cared as much about people saying this to actual children, like I think I, as a parent, would prefer to see that phrase in chalk on the street in a context of this is something that someone said to someone, honey. And these people are talking about it because it's wrong and you should never do this. And if somebody ever does this to you, rather than the first time they hear it is out of someone's mouth directed at them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's part of the goal of the project, letting especially like really young teenage girls know that this is not okay. Because like we talked about, there are so many mixed responses to it, so much like confused feeling about it. So just really being clear, like this is not okay. This should not be happening to you, and you have the right to talk about it and to report what was said and share your story and all of that.
So there's several categories of catcalls that are chalked: underage, pussy, race, fragile masculinity, sexually threatening, objectification, LGBTQIA+, and school harassment. How long kind of did it take for you to realize that those were the categories?
Yeah, I mean, and also I will say that hasn't been updated recently, and I think there could still be many more categories of harassment that are not listed there. Yeah, but I mean, I guess the most important thing to recognize is that people are harassed because of different aspects of their identity. So it doesn't just have to do with gender, it has to do with age, it has to do with sexuality, it has to do with race, ethnicity, religion, you know, so on and so forth. People are harassed in different ways depending on their identity. So that's something that I noticed really quickly because people were sending in firsthand stories saying, you know, because I wear a hijab, I am fetishized in this way. Or, you know, because I'm 12 years old, guys will say, call me when you're legal. So like stuff like that.
Yeah, and
it becomes clear who faces the harshest harassment based on different aspects of their identity. But yeah, I mean, I think the fragile masculinity one is really interesting because
I was going to say, I haven't really heard that one too much.
Really? Okay. Yeah. I mean, I feel like that one I normally describe people as when a guy says, you know, hey, can I get your number? And then you don't respond. And he says, well, fuck you anyway, bitch.
Oh, yes. Of course. Duh. Yeah. I thought it was like people being like, hey, you beta bitch. Like some guy's like holding his girlfriend's purse and then like some guy like harasses them for like being a male feminist.
I wish it was that. I really wish it was that. That would be so much better.
Yeah, I was like, ooh, what is that? Is male feminism that popular that they're getting harassed?
Yeah, no, that's
but they are
true.
Actually. They really are.
But that's
on
like
Twitter.
a potentially productive conversation.
It really is. I'm very proud of some of the boys who have come out of the woodwork, and you know what I mean? Like, it's been nice.
Yeah, no, that's amazing.
But so when did you start it, and what was like your first like oomph that you were like, I have to?
I started it in March of 2016, and I actually started it for a class project. So I was at university and I started it for a class. Yeah. It was just like a super broad assignment to immerse ourselves in a topic and document it on social media. So yeah, more than that, the inspiration really came from feeling like it wasn't going to stop happening. Because like I said, I grew up in New York. It was happening from being like 14 or 15 on, and it just never stopped. And I continued to not know how to respond. I felt like I couldn't say anything back because I was completely uncomfortable and I felt frozen in those moments. And if I did say something back, it would provoke more harassment. So this felt like a really good way to like find my own voice on the issue and respond for myself all of those times that it had happened to me. And then also just show a bigger audience that this is a big issue, because I think a lot of people are still saying catcalling is like on the lower side of important issues, like in terms of gender-based violence and gender-based issues. Like people still belittle it as like just words or not a big deal.
Which is like the same conversation as like rape jokes don't add to rape culture. It's like, yeah, they do.
Right.
Unless it's about the rapist, then it's great. Then make jokes about rapists all the time, like clown on them. But there is a huge intimidation factor in street harassment, and it makes people feel unsafe walking around where they normally like wouldn't think about that on the way to work.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it influences every aspect of someone's life, like walking outside. Like if you are a woman, a girl, or like someone in the LGBTQ plus community and you're facing harassment, like that just affects how you are in public space. That affects your comfort going to like the dry cleaner or like the supermarket. It's just a part of like every day of your life.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, and people are already thinking about, am I wearing the right thing? It's little things. Does it look good? Does it? But then that's coupled up with, is it too much? Is it going to make someone harass me today?
Right. No, for sure. I mean, and there are literally some catcalls that reference that, actually, like you're asking for it wearing that skirt, or you must want to be like assaulted, like types of catcalls like that, that speak about what someone is wearing, as and using it as kind of an excuse for the harassment.
Yeah, and verbal harassment is real. People don't say physical abuse versus verbal abuse because verbal abuse is any less harmful. People are very psychologically affected by verbal abuse.
Right.
Verbal abuse is very paralyzing. My mom and I took a self-defense course when I was like 16, and you had to go 4 hours for 6 weeks. Super intense. Most of it was physical fighting, but they would always catcall us too in the beginning. And my mom couldn't graduate the course because she was so paralyzed by the catcalling in the beginning that she couldn't even get to the fighting level.
Wow.
And that's a memory that's stuck with me. So whenever somebody says like catcalling, oh, it's a compliment, or, like.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, it's so clearly not a compliment, and it is so traumatizing, I think, in many cases and in many ways. So then kind of like, I guess like the gaslighting that goes into people saying like, oh, actually it is a compliment, when those facing the harassment are almost 100% always saying this isn't a compliment, this makes me feel unsafe, uncomfortable, horrible.
Yeah, no, and I know all of like the things you guys write down are submission based, and they're from real people who have had real things said to them, and that you guys saw a major increase in the number of submissions during the Kavanaugh trials, from it was like 5 a day to 20 a day.
Yeah, I mean, both during the Kavanaugh trial and also during just like the Me Too movement in general. I think the more people are talking about sexual harassment, whether it's in the workplace or in school or on the streets, the more people are emboldened to share their own story because they're hearing things that sound familiar and that they have experience with. So then, I mean, it's kind of beautiful because then we all become like a collective voice against something that's impacting so many of us, and we're able to raise widespread awareness, and it's great.
It's also it's like a collective realization sometimes, because I think so much of us don't realize things were harassment until somebody else says, I was harassed in this way. And then you go, Oh, I always thought that was just a thing that happened to me that like you just deal with.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So many girls, like young girls who message us on Instagram, they'll even start by saying, I'm not sure if this counts as harassment. I'm
Right.
not sure if my story could be included in this. I'm not sure if you're going to want to use this for your project.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because we're all kind of conditioned to think, yeah, this is kind of normal. This is maybe like part of being a girl in school. So yeah, it's really cool to be able to say, no, that is harassment, to recognize yourself in someone else's story. Yeah, it's a really powerful way to build a voice against it.
Yeah. If it's something that you're thinking about and it's inappropriate, it counts.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. And we tell everyone who wants to submit a story and everyone who has felt like uncomfortable or unsafe, it doesn't so matter what was said. It could be something like hello, beautiful, or sexy, or whatever. And it can still be harassment based on the situation, how it was said, tone of voice, and all of that. So yeah, I think
100%.
telling people that everything counts,
I
it's really important.
I was living with my grandmother in New York for like the last 3 years, and my grandmother is in a doorman building, and she is one of these doormen that's like, he's always been like super close with the family, and like he calls my aunt gorgeous and stuff, and she's cool with it, and she's always been cool with it. And him and I've always really, really liked him. But then there was a day that he called me gorgeous, that like I had dressed up, and I know it was meant to be nice, but I didn't want to talk to him for like a month because it made me feel different. Like I felt like now our relationship is different. It used to be friendly, and now I've now worn a skirt in front of you. So I feel like if I'm showing my legs, are you going to look at me in a different way? And also, when I look ugly, are you not going to catcall? No, I'm just kidding. Now do I have to blow dry my hair every day?
Exactly. But yeah, also like the problem is in that situation, I imagine you didn't feel comfortable like responding to him and saying like, hey, that makes me
I
uncomfortable.
didn't.
And that could have maybe like
I didn't.
solved things and made, clarified things for the future. But I think it's so hard to assert that like, hey, that actually crossed a line. That wasn't cool. I know you tell my grandmother she's gorgeous, but don't say that to me. Like that could clarify things, but I think there's like
I think what I did was like it was like very sullen teenager. I was just like, really you're gonna say that to me, like under my breath, like while walking away. Okay. It was very mature.
Yeah,
but
every response is super valid.
Thank you, because I think so too. Oh, is she not the best? Sorry, I'm just popping in because like I think about that interaction a lot. I think about all my interactions and I'm like, oh, is that valid? Is it not? If you guys are having those moments, like I feel like it's kind of a moment. But so, hey guys, a lot of these conversations, they leave us feeling kind of gross, physically, emotionally. I wanted to talk about how we can feel less physically gross doing something for ourselves. And I think some of you know what I'm about to say, but if you don't, get excited because I'm about to talk about my favorite bidet attachment, Tushy. Have you guys heard of Tushy? If you haven't, this is so exciting. There is a sleek bidet attachment that clips onto your existing toilet and sprays your butt completely clean with fresh water. Yeah, a bidet, except for it's not $9,000. It's called Tushy, and it's the best thing you can do for your butt. It sprays directly into your butt. There's like a little nozzle that you can adjust. You could also spray it into your vag. I've been doing it this week because I have my period, and like toilet paper doesn't clean as much as you would want it to. Like I feel like you can wad up so much stuff, and then like you're just left with all these like bits and papers and stuff. And here, Ben just walked in. How much do you like the Tushy?
Oh my God, my butt would be nothing without the Tushy.
Yeah, no, Tushy's so great. And like I was saying, I've been using it this week a lot because of my period, and I like to just like clean it out, feel new, fresh, revitalized, not gross. Take better care of yourself, Like sometimes you can not take the best care and you'll get like a UTI or a yeast infection or a hemorrhoid, or just an itchy butt or skid marks. And like, you could be one of those people. I've been one of those people that it's like, whatever. I don't care about stains. I don't care. Nothing's going to happen. If it does happen, it's fine. No, there's nothing more uncomfortable than like genital itch or genital pain, and Tushy can prevent so many of these things with a product that actually affects your life positively in other ways too. You don't want to use a lot of toilet paper? Great. You use like 80% less toilet paper with Tushy. You want to be good for the environment? Great. Less toilet paper, also less flushable wipes, which aren't even flushable. You want to have sex and feel good about it? Wash pre and post sex so people will want to eat your box and then you don't get a UTI and it's a dream come true. It's a great time. So go get a Tushy, treat your butt right, treat your crotch right, get your ball sack all non-sweaty so somebody can lick it till the cows come home. Just do it. Think about this. Wiping your butt with dry toilet paper, it doesn't remove all the poop. If you got poop on any other part of your body, say you got splattered with poop, why? I don't know. I'm not here to judge you. I'm just here to help you fix problems. If you got splattered with poop, I would put water on you and paper, not just dry paper. What are we trying to make a pooper mache? That's insane. Water bidets are common in the rest of the world. We're a very global podcast. Let's get with the times. A bidet saves you money. It saves you time. It won't clog your toilets. The water is fresh. Some of you are not familiar with how that works. It's because it's connected to the back of the thing. It's the same as the sink water. It's not like the poop water. That would be disgusting. Nobody is trying to do that to you. Ew. That would be gross. No, it connects to the water supply behind the toilet, clean, fresh water, same water you brush your teeth with. And I love my Tushy. When I got it in the mail, I was like, I can't believe how small it is. And it took like 15 minutes to set it up. I look forward to using it. The aim is amazing. I like to change if you're a very sensitive person, this is not something that they have said I can say. Maybe you could even masturbate with it. You know, some of you guys like water stuff. It doesn't work for me, but maybe you. But mostly it's just for cleaning stuff. Clean your butt, clean your vagine, use less toilet paper, be nice to earth, be nice to yourself, stop wiping, start washing. Remember, it does not need to cost $1 zillion to upgrade your bathroom, and you deserve the best time in the bathroom while you're TikToking. Clean your butthole with luxury. Tushy only costs $79 and changes your life. I love affordable luxury. If you do too, go to hellotushy.com/howcome and get 10% off your order. That is hellotushy.com/howcome. Okay, let's get back to the interview. A large portion of the incidents of harassment reported to you guys are incidents in school harassment. Can we kind of elaborate on that and how it's reinforced by maybe the institutions themselves?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, cool.
So we started the school harassment series because a lot of students were messaging us saying this didn't happen on the streets, it happened in my hallway, it happened in the classroom, a teacher told me this, my principal told me this. And I think what's really interesting about school harassment is that it's a lot of similar comments, like mostly young boys telling their female peers, like sexual stuff about their bodies, inappropriate stuff like that. I mean, there was one story that I thought was kind of striking where a male student was like masturbating under the table and showing his female peer. And then she went to the principal or a teacher and the teacher said, boys will be boys, this happened.
Oh my God.
So stuff like that, I think, is really, like it is being enforced by the teachers and by the principal that actually this is kind of normal. You've got to let boys express sexual feelings. So I think, that can be really disturbing. And then the girls will like submit the story to us and say, this happened. And then my teacher said boys will be boys. And it's cool that we can share those stories, but then
and then you blow them up online.
And it's funny too, actually, because one time a principal kind of I think said to a student, the bigger the hoop, the bigger the hoe. And and one of our chalkers from Catcalls of NYC went to the school because it was in New York. It was Forest Hills High School, and this was kind of written about in a few newspapers too. But one of our team members went outside of the school and wrote down what he said and attributed it to the principal, and they were really not happy about that. Actually,
wow.
they called the police and arrested our team member who went to chalk outside of the school. So I thought it was really interesting what lengths schools will go to kind of shut things down, keep things under wraps. Eventually, like he left the school, and you know, it's kind of a long story. It is super prevalent. It's a super prevalent problem in schools.
How terrible that the first response is protect this man, protect him at all costs, even though he said that to a child.
The young woman, you know, raising awareness about it outside of the school with any means possible.
There's been a kind of viral tweet going around, and like several comedians I know posted it at the same time, so I'm not going to attribute it to anybody, but it's literally like, if we learned about systematic racism as much as we learned about how bad spaghetti straps are in high school, like the world would be a different place. Or like if we learned about harassment more than we learned about like sending girls home for wearing tank tops.
No, absolutely. And I think like dress codes really like create that dynamic, and then the like you're asking for it line creates that dynamic where it's like somehow girls' bodies are provocative, even if they're like 12 or 13 or like prepubescent, like they're still encouraged to cover up because their bodies could be provocative in some way.
There's so many different ways that schools have mishandled things, predominantly with young girls, and I know that this does happen to especially like young queer people as well, of all genders. Like it's not, but primarily, and from my experience, it was a lot of rating girls' bodies in school. That was a form of acceptable harassment, where it was saying the list of best butt in the grade. One of those things that's supposed to be a compliment, but now that you're always like, oh, can I not wear spandex anymore, or am I going to get sexualized? And what you're saying with the policing of dress codes, it's like, if you see those bodies as sexual, maybe that's something that you need to look at.
Right.
Within yourself.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think that like a 12 or 13-year-old girl should not be sexualized.
It's not the best. Unless they want to do it themselves on TikTok, then go off with your bad self. I wish I could have sexualized myself and felt good about it. Right. That's the thing, is if we sexualize ourselves, it's like harlot. But if somebody else sexualizes you, it's like whore. It's just always bad. It's always bad. So how can you, like, first of all, how do you access safety, and how do you tell people to react if they are being harassed?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and that's a really tricky question always, because there's no one way to respond to being harassed. There's just no right way. And there's no like good suggestion either, because if you tell people like tell him to fuck off, like give him the middle finger, no doubt there will be some situations where that provokes more harassment and anger. So I never want to put someone in that situation. If you don't respond, maybe that'll provoke more anger too. There have been submissions sent in where where the catcaller gets really angry if the person he's harassing doesn't respond. So it does sometimes feel like a lose-lose situation. I tell people to respond with like however feels right, however feels comfortable. Like assess the situation, see if there are people around. If there are people around and you want to scream at the guy, like do it. Feel empowered in that. I don't know. How do you respond normally to?
I'm a brat, and sometimes I'll be like, really? Not wearing a mask and looking at butts today? Like that, which is like obnoxious. One time recently, pre-corona, I had gotten this. I was like walking in New York and this guy was like, "Oh, beautiful dress." And then I started telling him where I got the dress from and how much it was. And
Oh my gosh.
he could have not gone away faster.
Yeah.
Like, so I don't know, maybe tell them about your fashions and
Right.
just start talking to them and boring them. You know, like give them the girlfriend experience. Be annoying. And yeah, I do think the best way kind of to diffuse it is the classic don't talk to me like that, and just putting your hand out there usually is like a very clear signal of like I'm uncomfortable. And yeah, assess if somebody else is around so that if you have to take it to the next level, you do. And
Right.
I love having self-defense training to be able to fight if you need to. Prepare was the course that we took. That's obviously like last resort,
Right.
but it does kind of like keep you grounded, and like there is something really nice to know that like there are techniques as a smaller person that you can use to take a bigger person down.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that can be really helpful for sure. Yeah, no, then again, like I always like to tell people that there's no pressure to respond at all. Like if you don't, it definitely like feel it, whatever you do decide
Yeah.
to act on, like feel
Yeah.
empowered in that. Like don't get down on yourself for like, oh, I didn't respond well enough, or
Totally.
I didn't say the right thing.
Oh no, if you want to keep walking, you just keep walking. But then if they follow you, this was a thing that my mom taught me. If someone follows you, you stop, you turn around, you pretend you're on your phone or something, and then you go the way that they were coming.
Got it.
And then if they turn around, then it's like, okay, we're being chased. And then you know a little more. But it's like the first time you could maybe get in your head that's like, oh, are we just walking the same way, or is this person following me?
Right.
You guys, you got to hear lessons from Robin Casimir. She couldn't graduate Prepare, but she is a great mom.
That's so great. Yeah. Also, like to look out for each other is really important too on the streets. Like when you were telling the joke about the other woman, I thought where you were going with it was slightly different. Like, yeah, just like looking out for other people who are vulnerable in public space, like making sure you have your eyes on the guy who maybe catcalled them. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't tell that joke anymore though, because ultimately it like is it glorifies catcalling at the end of the day. You know, like it's being like, no, look at me, which is like, yeah, that's the joke. But at this point, and what I've said about other jokes is I'm like, I don't know. If it's anything with an intention that's like iffy and people are getting murdered over it still, it's like, maybe not. Maybe we don't do that anymore.
Yeah. I think that's a good call.
So yeah, how can we be active in diffusing catcalling if it's like happening to somebody else?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for people who have like power and privilege in public space, like this is where you come in. Like if you see harassment happening and you feel generally comfortable in public space, you know, like maybe like white cishet guys, like just say something. Just say that's not cool. Say like step in and just say that's harassment. I think that can be a really effective thing to do. You can also approach the person who is just harassed, but that can be trickier because maybe they don't want to be talked to. Right. So I think approaching the harasser, if you feel like you have the power to do that, can be cool, but also just looking out, like keeping your eyes open. If someone is like staring at someone else really grossly on the subway, you know, when we ride the subways again more frequently, like step in between that person and the person who's being looked at. Like there are ways to use your body and your privilege in public space to diffuse situations of harassment and make people more comfortable.
Yeah, 100%. Would you say, like, because you're still in New York now, right?
Yes, not right at this moment, but generally, yes.
But generally, yes. Would you say street harassment has gotten worse during the pandemic or stayed generally the same? Or
I think what has become really gross is like mask catcalls. So we've been getting submissions from people. Like one guy said to a woman working at a Dunkin' Donuts, your mask is making me hard. There have been a few catcalls like take off your mask, I want to see your beautiful face or your smile. So I think there's so many layers to it now too, also because maybe a catcaller isn't wearing a mask and getting too close, so then there's like the discomfort
Yeah.
of feeling like you're harassed and objectified and sexualized, and also the very real
You're gonna cough
discomfort.
on me.
Yeah, exactly.
You're making
so
me
there are more
sick
layers.
in so many ways.
Literally. Yeah, no, for sure. Especially in the midst of like the pandemic and when people were mostly inside, people were feeling really isolated when they did get harassed outside because there was no one around to step in. A lot of stores were closed, so normally maybe you would like walk in somewhere, duck in somewhere if you're being followed. So people were just generally feeling less safe when they were harassed during the pandemic.
Yeah. No, there was another tweet that, like, there's been like a lot of parallel comedians. I'm not saying who wrote it because you all wrote this tweet, but everybody was like, most of the women were like, I have loved wearing a mask because no one's telling me to smile anymore, which people always think of as like the littlest harassment or whatever,
Right.
that it's just like, I'm just telling you to smile. I'm just telling you to. No, you're telling me that I'm a harpy shrew and that women exist to like dazzle you and be good for like your viewing.
Right.
Like, I'm literally just going to buy weed. I have a resting bitch face. Let me do it.
Right. No, absolutely. It's this like way of trying to control our expression and just like our lives.
I would never. I mean, I might. Well, no, two wrongs don't make a right, but can you imagine just being like, hey, boy, what do you call, like, there's so many, there's so many fucking things that there have been like normalized to say to women, here, pussy, here,
right.
Hey, hottie, hey, fucking dump truck ass. My friend, this guy once said to her, girl, you're going to start a forest fire. We thought that was hilarious, but also it was like, how are there so many things and I can't even think of one disgusting thing to say to her
other than boy.
Hey, hot peen, get over here and smile. Like, what is, I don't know. I'm going off the rails. Yeah, I can't imagine saying to a guy, oh, honey, smile, or what. Like, they'd be like, are you fucking crazy?
Right.
I actually did do this to my boyfriend and his roommate like 2 weeks ago, or when they were still in town. I looked at their legs, and I go, ew, you guys, when the fuck is the last time you shaved your legs? And they both got like, they were like, wait, what?
That's kind of great though. Like, give them a taste of like
just like
what
a
it's
little
like
taste.
have your body policed. Yeah, I love
all the
that,
time.
Actually.
Just a tiny little taste. Every boyfriend's at least, oh, Remy, your ankles. I'm like, I'm sorry. I could shave my ankles and 3 will still sprout. They will make themselves known. It's not gross. It's hot. So yeah, on like a bigger level, we can get more involved, I think. How can they do that? And is there like legislation to support or any legal actions to do?
So, I mean, with Calls of NYC in New York, we do not advocate for legal actions because I just don't think that's the most effective. Like, especially just talking about defunding the police right now and conversations around the police and Black Lives Matter. I think policing just in general is not effective. It's dangerous, to say like the very least. So we don't advocate for that. We talk about raising awareness and having conversations, starting dialogue, education. So I do think the most important thing that people who want to get involved can do is just like read up on these stories, like listen to people's stories, take them to heart. If you don't experience harassment, like just try to start to understand like what the scope of street harassment is like in New York City. I mean, like Holla Back, this organization against harassment in public space, has some really great resources about like how to intervene when you see harassment happening. They also do trainings and stuff, so that's a great way to get involved. But yeah, I mean, like listening to people's stories, sharing your own story, just like really starting to learn about the scope of the problem is a important first step, I think.
Yeah. And I mean, okay, so I also think about like that fragile masculinity one that, or right, is that what we're saying?
Yeah.
Sometimes I think we feel like we need to hold space for those men, because like you don't want to like enrage them, you don't want to make them do something worse than what they're actually doing, but also at the same time I and I don't think this is somebody's responsibility, but I do think sometimes it is a teachable moment, that maybe toxic masculinity seeps into men that otherwise might not be that way at times. And so I do think that there is unlearning that can happen, and if you have a conversation with somebody, they are probably more likely to learn than just being like, you're fucking disgusting, what you just did is a crime.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. Like having a productive conversation, being like open to that maybe like difficult conversation. I mean, because like on one hand, it can be really frustrating to have conversations with people
Right.
who try to defend catcalling. Like there are people in the comments of Catcalls of NYC who maybe say, okay, yeah, it's definitely not cool to say I'm gonna fuck you, but what about just like beautiful or sexy? Like those are nice things. And those comments frustrate me because I understand why that's not the case. But I think those conversations can also be productive because then maybe those people are willing to talk about, actually this story happened to someone. The guy just said beautiful, but then maybe he followed her or something like that. So I do think it can be productive to, like have those conversations and maybe bridge gaps in people's knowledge about the issue to a point where they start to interrogate their own behavior and their own thinking. I mean, I think that can be productive, but it puts a lot of burden on us.
And not necessarily with like every Joe Schmo on the street that like, like probably more people who are in your lives. Like if you notice that like it's a recurring thing, and that you are comfortable having that conversation because like the conversation can be exhausting. And to make people realize that. But like, to those guys who are like, I don't understand. Like, why can't I just say beautiful? Why can't I just say sexy? Like, well, why can't you just say hi? Like, I think hi is a fine thing. Some people would say that is even harassment.
Yeah.
Because they're just going about their day and they didn't expect it to be stopped.
Right.
But sometimes, what if somebody fell in love with you and they genuinely were like, hi, I really want to ask you out. And then you say, no, I'm going to work. And then it's about, I guess, their follow-up. Is it, you fucking bitch, you're not even attractive? Or is it, no worries, have a great day?
Right. No, and that's the important part because I think a lot of the fear and discomfort comes from knowing that the response could be anything from like a lot of anger to literally like physical violence. So I think if we got to a point where men who catcalled were maybe doing it because they genuinely want to fall in love, I like have a very hard time actually believing that that's the motivation for catcalling ever. But yeah, if we got to a point where maybe they were doing it for a genuine reason, and then if they were told no, they would immediately cease and desist. I think that could be like a healthier place. Where like maybe there's room for flirtation on both sides, like on the street at some point in the future. But like right now, what's happening is not that. It's a form of control. It's a form of like exerting power over another person, making someone else feel unsafe.
The streets just sometimes look more romantic in rom-coms, you know, like, and that shit's not happen. And so I think that's what the issue is even with sometimes a high is like that person didn't put themselves in the situation for a dating thing.
Right.
You know, like say hi at a bar when that's a thing again. Say hi on a dating app. Say hi in spaces that people like want to get hit on. I just think that's like a more surefire thing.
Yeah. No, for sure. And a lot of people are saying that, like, where can I hit on someone? Where can I meet a partner? And it's like, a dating app, a bar, like there are places that are designated for that type of behavior. And the street is just distinctly not one of them right now.
It's not one of them. The street's for style and masks. Like, so, okay, you guys are very global now. There are 200 catcalls of sites around the world, which is wild. Like, it's not, sometimes we're on this podcast and we're like, oh, this is such an American problem. Like, this is a global issue.
Right. There have been stories of women, you know, like either having an ashtray thrown at them. That happened in Paris. A woman who responded to a catcall and just said stop, had an ashtray thrown at her head. And then with Ruth George in Chicago, I don't know if you heard the story, but she was murdered after rejecting someone's catcall. So it is like a very serious fear that catcalling is this part of gender-based violence at large that is very dangerous and very scary. I mean, the stories that I keep like most closely reading are the ones in New York. So like the ones that stick out to me the most are in New York. And I mean, like the one that was just generally most shocking, I think, in the past 4 years has been one said to a woman wearing a hijab. The guy said, "You owe us a little something after 9/11," like kind of coming on to her sexually, and he threw a beer can at her. So I think that was like probably the most shocking.
Yeah.
But yeah, like around the world, actually what sticks out when I think about all of the accounts around the world is the patterns and themes that come about. So like, for example, we've gotten DMs in New York towards like 2 women holding hands, men saying, "You need a man to, like you need a man, you're not gay, you just haven't
been fucked by the right guy yet, and that right is me." Yep.
Right. Yeah. And that's been submitted to Calls of NYC, but then like super similar instances have happened in London or have happened in Trinidad and Tobago. We have an account there. So it's just like not only is street harassment a global problem, but these like notions and these themes within street harassment for like people being targeted for certain aspects of their identity are very similar in different places.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I wonder what it says about our evolution and stuff. And I maybe we should get Helen Fisher back on this because she's like a great evolutionary psychologist, but that there are such consistent themes over the world that you could be receiving a DM from Germany and it's the same from a DM in New York and same in the DM in Israel. Those are the only 3 places I care about. No, I'm just kidding. Germany, Israel, and New York. Fucking Jewish bitch. Okay. Oh, Chalk Back is an international youth-led movement that you guys started. So how youth is that youth?
Really youth.
Youth.
I mean, yeah, I would say most people involved in Chalk Back are between the ages of 15 and 25. Yeah, so people who start accounts are predominantly like teenagers or in their young 20s. And so yeah, we call it a youth-led movement because we're all we're all young. Yeah.
And what are they doing?
So primarily just everyone has Instagram accounts inspired by Calls of NYC, where, we gather submissions, we write them on the street where they happened, and then we share the stories on Instagram. But, also like sometimes we do speaking engagements and like talk to, before COVID, like talk to students in classrooms. We have Chalk Back events like the one that you saw in Central Park where everyone's invited to share their story together.
I didn't realize that was a Chalk Back event.
Yeah, Chalk Back event. I mean, yeah, that was like before, I guess that was like a year ago. So Chalk Back was still developing. But yeah.
Have you been getting more of an upsurge of young men or queer people talking about their targeted harassment in recent years? Because I feel like at least boys and men have been realizing recently that they've been sexually harassed physically as well. And I just wondered if they're getting targeted verbally.
Yeah, I mean, definitely we get a lot of young queer people submitting stories of like still gender-based or like homophobic or transphobic harassment. Like cis men and boys, we get very few submissions, like from just like street harassment. That being said, when we do get stories submitted by boys and men, it's often they're harassed by other men on the street. So I think that's interesting to note too. But yeah, I mean, occasionally we get stories from boys and men who are harassed by women, but that's pretty rare. And yeah, I do think there's a lot of stigma still for like boys and men submitting stories of sexual harassment for sure. So like our platform is open to everyone who wants to submit.
Yeah, or feeling uncomfortable even enough to raise my hand and be like, does this count? Like, why am I saying this? Like, am I just like, am I uncool? Like, could I just not go with the flow? That's how I feel like a lot of what I would get from boys when I was growing up, and we'd be like, ugh, catcalling or whatever. And they,
Mhm.
or, ugh, someone grabbed my pussy on the street, you know, like shit like that, as bad as that.
Mhm.
And they'd be like, well, I'd love if someone grabbed my dick on the street. I'd
Right.
love if, you know.
Oh yeah, people say that all the time. Like I would be so complimented by half of the things on your page. Like those are some comments that we get, and it's hard to explain that it's just so different. Sometimes it's hard to make that clear enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Whether it's and this is like goes as far as like online harassment too. Like I had recently had a fight with somebody that escalate a famous somebody that escalated to him saying, I want to rape you so hard that your pussy hair goes on fire.
Oh my God.
Which is one, that's not how pussy works. But like two, saying that is so harmful in so many. The fact that you think you can get off saying that, the fact that you make somebody have that image of you doing that, the fact that you can have that image in your head and then still say, I want to inflict horror on you. Like, that's where this stuff goes if we don't nip it in the bud.
Yeah.
And then it gets even worse if we don't nip it then.
Yeah. No,
So, yeah.
absolutely. Even those, I mean, yeah, those words and that phrase and just like hearing that, it has like this power, just like saying that.
It's horrible.
Yeah. Completely horrible.
It's debilitating. And it just makes you feel like the only value you have in the world is your attractiveness and you're getting fucked. Like you're just there for somebody else. And it's like, that's like everything we stand against. Everything on this podcast is intertwined. And anything that you think is too small or not worth it or maybe doesn't count, it's like this is contributing to a system. Yeah. Ugh.
Yeah. No, I agree. I've dealt with a lot of online harassment too, actually, like over the years running Catcalls of NYC, and it's just like what people can get away with saying, and like the lack of impact or like the lack of action that they have to face because of what they say, but like the burden that we carry because of what they say, it's extremely frustrating. Yeah.
Yeah. And so if you're listening to this and you're like, something similar has been said to me, and I always thought that it was like normal, or like I thought I was weird for being upset about it. Like, you're not weird. It's very valid. And you should probably write into Catcalls and they'll validate you, or you can write into us and we'll validate you. And there are laws in place. Like there's the New York Street harassment law, which prohibits anyone from repeatedly and intentionally harassing another person by following that person around a public space. So if somebody follows you at least twice, you can report that. There are broader laws about disorderly conduct that can be applied. The penalty is only $250 and up to 15 days in jail for harassment in the second degree, indicated by a repeated course of conduct, which, like, nobody's really getting put in jail right now.
Right. I can't imagine it being like enforced also in a helpful way.
Yeah, most people don't report even the most serious of harassment because the institution is not there for criminals to go to jail. It just isn't. There's, like, we were talking about Kavanaugh. There's so much, what about him, you know, and his reputation and ruining his life. Right. But they don't really think about the victim. So I guess it's up to us to keep educating each other, keep having these conversations, keep supporting each other. If somebody says they got harassed, maybe check yourself when you try to blame them for what were they wearing, or you're being too sensitive or something like that.
Yeah, don't absolutely never blame someone for being harassed. All you need to say ever is I hear you, and that is completely valid. But yeah, definitely like interrogate those feelings. If like it's your inclination to blame someone or tell someone to dress differently or do any sort of victim blaming, just nip it in the bud and really like think about where that's coming from for you.
Totally. And I wouldn't blame yourself either, because there are things that we like.
Right.
Jay Jordan has said it's the water that we're steeped in, whether it's homophobia or racism or gender bias or something. Like, we have grown up in these systems that were constructed in a certain way, and as much as unlearning that we have done, there is still far more to go. And so when I don't know, I've had those moments where I've needed to check myself, and like they're important. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and it's possible to grow and have uncomfortable conversations and get to a better place. So like involve yourself in the spaces where you can do that. And like, get out of your comfort zone. Is there anything else that you're like, ooh, I'm dying to share, or anything you guys are promoting right now that you'd like us to pump out?
Not too much. Just, submit your stories to Catcalls of NYC always. And I mean, we're looking to highlight quarantine or like coronavirus relevant harassment that people are facing right now. Just because I think it's really important to talk about. It is. That's pretty much it.
It really is. No, I mean, I do think it's like, it's an indication of things like how I started this podcast being like, ha ha ha, we're going to like even kind of semi-joke about it. And then when you really get into the nitty gritty, it's like, nope, it's really very, very bad. Like, we know it's very bad, but it is still a lot of our inclination to be like, haha, it's funny, it's fine, because I think it's a kind of armor.
Yeah, for sure. Since we've all faced it so much and it's like become so normalized in a lot of ways, I agree. I feel like it can be easier to laugh about it sometimes, and then how it's like portrayed on media and in movies and stuff too.
Yeah, maybe we'll get a heroine that responds to catcalling in the right way.
That would be amazing. Yeah, I actually think there was a documentary or film about RBG, and her daughter responds in a great way to street harassment. So
oh my God,
if you haven't seen that, check it out. Yeah.
Is it the one with what's her face? The new RBG one that came out?
I think it's the new RBG one that's like acted, not the documentary.
Felicity, what's her face?
Yes. Her.
Just RBG. Okay, cool. Oh, Gabrielle's writing me a note. The movie is called not just RBG, it's called On the Basis of Sex. Okay.
Cool. Okay.
Amazing.
Yep.
Yeah. You guys check out RBG. I'm going to do it too. That's our homework this week. And take stock of, like, I don't know, maybe stuff's been said to you. Write it to us, or write it to Catcalls of NYC, or whichever Catcalls chapter you are affiliated with, because we have quite the global fan base, and they'll be able to find whichever Catcalls apply to them. So Sophie, it has been so awesome having you here. I'm so glad we finally got to make this happen.
Thanks so much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Of course. Can you tell everybody where they can find you guys online and do all this stuff?
Yeah. So you can find Catcalls of NYC mainly on Instagram, but also Twitter and Facebook. You can find Chalkback on Instagram too. The handle is chalkback.org. Or find us online at www.chalkback.org.
Perfect. Okay, Sophie, I have to ask you this question, because I have to ask everybody after a sexual experience, which this has kind of been. Sophie, did you finish?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. I'm glad. I just love everyone's response to that question. I finished as well, you guys.
Amazing.
This has been a great time. Sophie, thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Of course. And we'll see you guys next time on How Come. Goodbye.
Bye. It's not you, it's me. I try so hard to finish honestly. They say you'll know when you go all the way. straight from A right down to O. Oh no, I think that I've still got a ways to go. Oh, I'm sick of this and I have got to know. How come I can't achieve? How come I can't achieve? I'm rolling up my sleeves. Oh baby, I believe these guests can help, 'cause I can't do it by myself. I wanna jizz